Arcpiece is asking, if I don't like the game, why would I play it?
It's a good question. Been asking this question for, I don't know, 10 years.
Here's the thing, right? Like, I do this podcast, and before I even did this podcast, I'm going to play everything. I'm not going to box myself into a corner. So I'll play something, and if I don't like it, I'll tell you that I don't like it. But just because I don't like some of the games in the series doesn't mean that I don't like others. Like, I liked Bloodborne after Bobby got me playing it, and like I went through and I beat that game. And then I played Dark Souls 3 on stream. And like that, playing it on stream was not the way for me to play that game, but I did end up beating it. So like, yeah, like I see something like Elden Ring and it's like, okay, like I'll try this. It's not like I'm just going to be like, no, I'm not going to play this, because to me, that's counterproductive to my ability to do this podcast well.
Yeah, I get that.
So I want to be able, when Bobby's speaking about this at the end of the year, when we do the Game Awards or our little award show, and Bobby's like, I really think this is the best game of the year. And I'm like, well, I didn't play it because I don't like those games. That's not a good conversation. I'll tell him, well, I played it and I didn't like it. And as a person that's not a huge fan of those games, this is why.
Yeah.
And that way I could bump back against him. Or I could be the one to be like, Bloodborne really should be in the top 10 and oddly enough, fight for it. So that's why, even though I'm not a huge fan of these games, I will always I'll give them a look, because you never know what will grab you at some point in your life. And I want to be able to do this, this hobby to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly rare that I'll look at a game and be like, that's just not for me. And I'm not going to think about it, especially if it's something that I know that Bobby is very into, because I want to share his excitement and have something to talk about with him.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah. And the thing about it too is, regardless of like agnostic to the who the developer is, when you kind of talk about and treat games the way Justin and I treat it, when a developer of this stature puts out a game, you take notice, right? Like, From has carved out their place in the industry in a very concrete and interesting way in the last however many years, going from basically unknown to the creator of a genre of games that is now wildly popular, which is crazy to think about, right?
Yeah.
And so when they put out a new game, especially a new game which seems to be, well, maybe in setting, not like going as far as you want, in sort of scope, seems to be going to another level, right? On the scope that they're trying to push. I think it's something you stand up and take notice for. Also, what I do love, and you actually mentioned something with Justin, you were talking about how you're playing Quantum Break right now, right? And Ange, your wife, basically saw it and was like, huh, this looks like Control. Like she's right. She said like she could pick out like the Remedy sort of like style, right? Yeah. From watching you play. And the first fucking monster, the first thing you see in this trailer, you're like, oh, this is a From game, like immediately.
You
just know the design, the animation, and that's the thing too. Like like even like things I love, and they'll be in the game because they don't do stuff like this. But like there's that moment where like the character is riding up on those like giants, like pulling that cart on their horse, and they like drag their sword across the ground like before they go to hit them. And that like that kind of animation and that kind of like sound effect and that thing, like that's a From marker, and I love being able to like see that, in a game and sort of, like right away, like this is who this group is. Like I remember back when the Sekiro trailer first like came out and they didn't do like the From that was From like into like the middle of the trailer. And there was a moment where like the character opened a door, and I think you and I were watching it together, and I was like, we were texting, and I was like, is this a From game?
Yeah.
And that's like, I love that. I love when studios can do different things, but have like this cohesive sort of DNA that sort of permeates through their work. I'm plus like Miyazaki, the director of this game, who directed the first Dark Souls, directed Demon Souls, directed Bloodborne, is like one of like the great game directors out there. So it's very cool whenever he does one of these games. RGP says in the chat, you told me to buy Dark Souls 3 when I was in Talking Games episode 100. Now I can't play any other games. I blame you. I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry.
I think another point kind of about playing the games that you don't generally like is I'm not the only one that does this. Bobby will pretty much buy any Rockstar game that comes out.
I will.
and give it a shot. And he always tells me,
Yeah.
I'm hopeful this is the one that grabs me.
Yeah. Mhm.
And he does it for the same reason I do it. It's because he knows that I'm going to want to talk about it, and that I'm excited for it. And so he'll come to me and be like, yeah, I just couldn't do it. It wasn't for me. But to his credit, he will always try.
Yes. Even with I bought the latest Assassin's Creed game. And I know from just hearing about it that there's no way I'm going to probably finish it. But there are open world, the thing is there are games sometimes that I don't think I'm going to like, that I play it and I end up loving it. I remember back when Skyrim came out for the first time, it's not my type of game. And I was like, I don't know if I want to play this. I played a little bit of Oblivion and didn't really get into it. I played some of Fallout 3 and I liked it, but I just couldn't stick with it. And I was like, I rented it from Redbox, and I was like, if I rent it and I like it, then I'll buy it or whatever. But I'm mostly gonna rent it, play it for a day or two, and then return it and never think about it again. I rented it. I went home, and I played it for 8 hours straight, and then basically went back to return it to Redbox and walked next door and bought it at GameStop. You know what I mean? And if I had just said oh no, it's a big huge open world game, I don't really care about these games, I never would have put 120 hours into it and loved it. So I think that it's important, like Justin said, to just not put blanket statements out and say, I just don't like these kind of games. Now, that's if you want to play a lot of games and talk about games and like we do. That's not saying look, if you have a limited amount of time to play games and you only want to make sure you play the games that you really want to play, that's 100% fine, and you don't need us to tell you that. But it's one of those things where I think a lot of people who are in this chat and a lot of people who hang out with us in our community, they want to talk about games in a fully formed way. And I've always been in the mind of, I'm not going to talk about something unless I know about it and I do my research about it, or I have firsthand experience of it to talk about it. So Mello, I never finished the story. I got to the end. I flew to that island or whatever, when you take the dragon over to that other place to do the end game part. And I think I died. And I was like, I'm just going to go. I don't want to do this right now. That's after I played 150 hours of it or whatever. I was done with it though. That's the thing too. I didn't need to finish the story of Skyrim, which I'm sure would have been earth shattering. The end of the narrative of Skyrim. I
did the ending of Skyrim after 80 hours.
I
was like, oh, that's right, the main quest.
I don't, but the main quest was never in those games, it was never the thing to me. It was never the main quest. All the side quests were so much more interesting. Because the main quest was just I am the chosen one. That's just the main quest of Skyrim. The side quests were always way more interesting.
I think another really good example of that, playing something that you don't think you're gonna like and then you end up loving it, was God of War for you.
Yeah, the new God of War, absolutely. Yes, the new God of War was 100% that. I was not excited about that game at all. I was like, it looks nice, it looks very nice, and I'm sure it'll play well. But I like the original God of War games, but I don't love them. You know what I mean? I they're good, they're fun games, and they were very impressive technically at the time. But I was never I need to play this. I never cared about Kratos. I don't care about any of that stuff. And also, Sony has gotten to this very particular type of structure of their games, which is okay, this is going to be a 40 to 50 hour, open world game. It's going to be sort of Ubisoft-ish, but it's going to have good story stuff to it because we're Sony and that's what we do, right? That's kind of where they got to. And God of War was different than those games. You know, it was that length, but it had a different sort of like a different sort of structure to it. And yes, I finished the next. You finished the story of God of War because the story of God of War is important, like to the enjoyment of the game. You know what I mean? But yeah,
we've been doing this for what 7-8 years.
Yeah,
and I think God of War is maybe 1 or 2 games that you were like, I'm 90% done with this, and you haven't even started it yet.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that. I got very lucky because my wife and child went away for an entire like 4 days, like right as God of War came out. So it was like, I am just going to sit down and just play it for as many hours as I can so I can finish it. And when I started, I was like, okay, this is cool, you know, but like, and then point where I didn't want to stop playing it, you know? So
that game gets good.
Yeah, the game is very good. The game is very good. And yeah, absolutely. And there are a ton of types of games too. Like at some point in my life, I didn't like playing FromSoft games either. I played Demon Souls when it came out. I played Dark Souls at first. Like I tried playing them and I bounced off of them super hard. Like when I first played them. So like, and it was going back to them and giving them a chance that made me enjoy them. So like the reason I'm hyped about Elden Ring is because I decided to try to play something that I wasn't enjoying, but I think that a lot of some of it is like I don't want it's some of it I don't want to miss out on the conversation, but some of it's also like I don't want to say I don't like this thing unless I really try to give it a go, to play something and to understand the game, right? Like if I go into it and just go like, fuck this, like it's not like game B, you know what I mean? Like and judge it on that merit or try to play it in that manner, then I didn't really give it a chance. I just sort of like went into it wanting to dislike it and found a reason to keep disliking it. There are plenty of games that I try that I want to like that I try and I don't like, but like whether it be a tactics game or a card battler or a roguelike or whatever, like I want to go in and I want to play the game on its merits, right? I want to play the game. I want to meet the game where it is and try to play it for what it is. And if I still don't like it, then that's fine. Then we part ways amicably. You know what I mean? You know, and again, there's only so much time, right? So like, I'm not gonna be like I'll try to play the new Assassin's Creed, but I'm not gonna like, you know, play Mafia 3 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna play the ones that don't get great reviews or don't seem like they're doing anything new. But you know that sometimes you get in those things. And it's totally okay. And Gru mentioned something being not for them. That's also totally cool. Like I like, you know, talking about things, talking about media, talking about anything is a multi-layered process, right? And it's like sometimes there are things that aren't for you that are good, but you just don't like them. So it's like I'll respect you from a distance, you know. Then there are, but you have to be able. Say, like, sorry, go ahead, Justin.
Let me jump in. Let me jump in for 1 second.
Yeah.
Like earlier in the stream, we talked about Tales of Arise.
Mm-hmm.
That game is not for me.
Yeah.
That game will never be for me. I respect it though because it's a long-running franchise.
Yeah.
But I know that that's not a game that you and I are going to have to talk about at the end of the year. No. So I can respect it from a distance.
Yeah.
I'd be like, that thing is not for me, and I don't ever have to worry about playing it until one day you play one, and then I'm like, fuck. Now I need to go play Tales of Arise.
But also talking about things like this isn't for me, so therefore I bounce off of it or I'm not interested in it. But then there are also times where if no difference between that and no, this game is just not doing the things that it set out to do in a way that's satisfying or entertaining or thought-provoking or whatever the game is trying to do, right? And you have to be able to say like, okay, no, this game is just isn't working. It's not just not working for me. It isn't working for these reasons. Now, again, even the thing when you say this game isn't working, it's an opinion, right? It's like it is still for you, but there's a difference between like, you know, it's like saying like I don't like Westerns, right? But I don't like Westerns, or Westerns are bad. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference between those two statements. Right. One of them is more fun to get people like a rise out of people by doing, like saying The Last of Us Part 2 is a bad video game. When I don't feel that way, it's a much more nuanced and layered conversation for me than that. But you have to be able to know if you want to talk about games critically, Not if you just want to talk about fucking games with your buddy and on voice chat, who cares? But if you want to talk about games critically, like you have to be able to start figuring